Welcome back to the final episode of our summer series, The Gentle Runway, stepping back in on your own terms. Soon the calendar will be starting to whisper that back to school season is around the corner. But before you feel your heart rate climb, we want to offer you something different in this episode. This episode is about creating a gentle runway back into the school year, one that lets you take off on your own terms instead of feeling like you've been launched out of a cannon. Today we're talking about easing back into routines without sacrificing the peace we've all worked so hard to find this summer.
Shell, I have loved the summer series so far, and I'm always so surprised on who our listener base is sometimes. Of course, the majority of our listeners are educators, which makes perfect sense. However, just personally, both of my sister-in-laws on my husband's side have been listening, and one of which I totally understand. She is a teacher. She's a high school teacher, though, so very different context than us in elementary. So I would actually love to have some high school perspective on the show in the next little while coming up and some guests. However, I just love that she can give different feedback to me. So she always says, like, I would never teach elementary school. It's so funny because as elementary teachers, usually we say high school scares the crap out of us. And that's kind of what you're nodding because I think that we feel the same. So I love that she listens from a different perspective. But then my other sister-in-law listens, and she is totally not in education. She is a very, very business type of female, and she's won top 40 under 40 in Canada. Like, she runs multi-million-dollar corporations, and yet she's listening to our teacher podcast. And lots of times she listens when she's on flights to her next meeting across the world somewhere, which it's just so wild to me because I look at her career and I am mesmerized by the things that she does and the things that she accomplishes. But then she says to me, like, I could never be a teacher. And I love listening to your podcast and finding out how your day-to-day goes. So which always is just interesting to me that people don't really actually know what's happening in the realm of education in our classrooms. So when she was reaching out to me with different perspectives that she had after listening to our podcast, I thought, maybe this isn't just for teachers, right? It's for parents as well, and for friends of teachers, and for people just interested in what's actually happening in the education world. So are there people that listen to Michelle that have talked to you that you were surprised that were listeners of the podcast?
So one of them is my good friend, Amy. I had ran into her at a sporting event not that long ago, and she had messaged me a couple of times about different things, and I hadn't responded. And when I saw her, I said, I am so sorry. Did you think that I had been abducted by aliens? I am not keeping up these days. And she says, oh no, I know you're still fine. She goes, I listen to you every week and I know you're doing well. And I thought, oh goodness, thank you for having patience for me as a teacher in May and June because I was not getting back to her. And so she had just commented on how much she enjoys the episode and of course loved the husband episode because she knows Derek as well. And I do really feel that I hear a lot of times that people are listening to us, not just for the teacher aspect of things, but just the life aspect of things, being a woman, being a teacher, being a wife, being a mom. So those comments are always surprising to me when people say they've tuned in.
Yeah, totally. I just thought it was kind of a cool connection to thinking about all these other people that are listening, right? That aren't just educators and what I guess we bring to their world, but what they also bring to ours when they give us feedback. So it's just a cool kind of connection that I was thinking about. So as we are now at the end of our summer series and talking about that kind of slow step back into the classroom and how that looks, I know that stepping back into the classroom after the summer can feel like an emotional roller coaster. The goal isn't necessarily to hit the ground running full speed ahead. At least it shouldn't be the goal. That's just what my opinion is. And I know that you and I have talked about this as well, because in the past that has been what has happened. And then I know that by, middle of September, I am burnt out again, right? Or I am exhausted and tired. And you can't keep up with that, that pace of life as we normally do though with teaching. So this year, I am going to be much more understanding of that. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing, that it can be a slow takeoff back into the classroom. And so what are some things that you're thinking of for you, Michelle, as you transition into administration now from a classroom role that you're going to do to kind of smooth yourself in a much slower way?
So you've heard me say that my friend Tamara says that summer does not have to end just because we go back to work. And I'm already channeling that because she's right. Summer, actually, the season doesn't end until the third week of September. And the weather is so beautiful out, and hopefully it's still beautiful where we live by that time. But I know for me, when I was returning to the classroom, I like to ease back in, and so just go in for a couple of hours one day and increase that time before we officially like to go back in. I admire those people that wait until the actual scheduled contractual day that they have to be back. And I have to say, Nicole, I've never been able to do that, or I wouldn't say been able to, but have never chosen to do it that way. But I sure admire the people that do. But I like to just ease back in. So when I think about easing back into this administration role, I feel like, yes, I have been in this role before, but I also have so much to learn. I was saying the other day, it feels like a homecoming, yet it feels like a brand new landscape. It's only been 7 years, but we know the complexity of education has changed a lot in 7 years. So I feel like I have to mindfully go easy on myself as I transition back in, because I know some aspects of it for me are going to be super comfortable, and some parts of it are going to be like drinking through a fire hose, because I have a lot to learn in terms of the systems that have been put in place that didn't exist when I was there 7 years ago. And so I know for me, I will, and my admin partner and I have already talked about this. We will go in when we need to go back in, even a little bit before, just easing back in slowly, getting our groove, figuring things out one step at a time.
I also admire, and I truly do when I say that. Like, I love when teachers tell me, "Oh, I don't go back until like the first day when our contractual hours start," which I think is amazing. And I need to pick their brain a bit more. For me, I've always had a bit of a slow burn. The problem is I don't know what the word slow means. So when I go in, I'm there for 8 hours the first day, and that's what I don't want to do this year. So because I'm transitioning into a classroom role again and out of an interventionist role, I have a clean blank slate right now in my classroom. So nothing is set up. All of my items are at the school in a different location being stored, and then I have to move into the classroom, which I am going to do on more of a slow pace. But the difference is I've never set up my classroom with somebody else. I have always done it by myself. I put music on and I bring in my coffee and different snacks and I just power through. But this year, I am going to accept help. I have been offered by so many of my teaching colleagues and my friends outside of teaching, and I'm going to take them up on that. I'm going to find a way of connecting with them and inviting them in. And honestly, I think that they're going to have some cool, unique ways of being able to help me guide how I can set up my classroom maybe a little bit differently than I'm used to, even and in a new classroom. So I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm not going to go in 8 hours the first day. I'm going to go in a few hours here, a few hours there, but also not just transitioning into the classroom actual space, but just mentally. I also do like to do a little bit of PD over the summer just to kind of keep my skills sharp. I am doing a summer course this summer, but I'm purposely have moved it until the week right before school starts. So then that way I do hold most of my summer to myself. And I'm interested in this course that I'm doing. It's around science of reading. That's my passion. So I'm excited to take it, but I do want to push it a bit closer to the beginning of the school year so I can slowly ease back into things this year.
I think it's a great idea to just dip your toes in and try to go back into the school year with the same intentionality that we tried to leave the school year, with having things scheduled for our own health and wellness, and to schedule in those breaks. Because as we know, when school starts, it is hardcore, it's fast, it's furious, it can be all consuming. And so I love your approach of asking for help. I think you said maybe for the first time in quite a while. And I will definitely be doing the same. I have this list of things that my admin partner and I need to go over, because admittedly, there are things that I do not know. I do not know some of these things, and to really be intentional about how I'm going to go and learn those, but also be able to still enjoy the good weather and some balance and some breaks and enjoy the time with my family too.
And just because you and I have talked about going in a little bit earlier in the school year than it starts, please hear us when we say, do not feel obligated. If you're
Mhm.
the type of teacher that wants to wait and not go in early, then don't. And if that's not what brings you joy, then don't do that. For me, I just know that if I can ease in a little bit, it will take off some things for me to do in September, let's say. So if I can set my classroom up fully before the kids come in, then I'm going to feel more at ease in September. But that might not be for everybody, right? I have a girlfriend that refuses to go in 1 second before the first day of school. And like I said, I love her for it. And yet she manages it, right? That's her
Mhm.
way of doing things. Everyone is different, and I know that that works for her. It wouldn't work for me. Just like she doesn't think that what I do would work for her. So, but please hear us when we say don't feel obligated to obviously go in and ease it in and tip your toe in if that's not the way that you like to do things. But what I would recommend is what Michelle was saying, because I know I've never done this before, but it's to hold on to some of those summer things. So whatever you've put in place for yourself in the summer to bring you joy, to kind of be able to still step back, rest, and relax, I'm going to continue doing that well into September. I'm not going to let just summer stop anymore when school starts. I've never in my 22 years ever lived that way. I hate to say that, but going into September, I'm like, all my kind of friends are I'm not going to see for a month or two. My family's like on go time with, sports as well. But no, I'm going to let summer continue, right? I'm going to let the rest of my life continue. I'm going to keep planning things because come September, I usually never plan, dates with my husband or time with my girlfriends. I just don't. But not this year, man. I've learned, and I think just by us talking about it, that I am like not going to let summer end just because school has started.
I think it's a great motto to live by and a great value to hold near and dear to us because I think it's so important. Because I know for me, my girlfriends would hear me say, "Oh, I only have a week left of summer. Oh my goodness, I only have 3 days." And I would get this panic, like those Sunday scaries, right? It's this summer scary of, "Oh my goodness, it's almost over." And don't do that to yourself. You can still have a life once work begins again. And I know for me, going in and easing in a little bit early is helpful for me because our evenings and our weekends are jam packed with our family events and responsibilities. So I can't stay late every night. So if I don't go back on that until that first day, and I'm feeling like I am not prepared, I don't really have that flexibility in the same way that I did when I didn't have family events or sports evaluations or places to get my kids. And so I have to be super mindful and intentional in how I plan my time because it's necessary that I'm out the door at a reasonable hour.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of excited though for the fall in that our family's going to be living in an Airbnb because our house won't be done yet. So we'll be fully moved out of our other house by then, of course, living in the Airbnb, which means I have less work to do at home. For the first time ever, I'm going to love that because normally, just like kind of when report card season comes, and all teachers know what I'm talking about by this, it's like the cleanest my house has ever been. It's when all my dishes are put away, my laundry is done, my house is completely spotless. And so it's kind of going to be that little bit of feeling like I don't have all these home jobs to do. And I can focus just on kind of like setting up my classroom and getting that started and focusing on my kids and their activities as we ease into September. So that's going to be like a nice little gift for me this year is that I will have less to do at home. So I can maybe step back in a little bit differently at school as well.
I see a future podcast episode coming, Nicole, when you're moving into your new build and how you are managing school life and moving in. And I hope you ask for help at that time too, when you are unloading and setting up your new home. It's going to be such an exciting time for you and your family.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to having a bit of a break for the first September of not having all the home projects, but I know that's not a luxury of everybody, but I'm going to take it while it's here. The one thing I'm also though going to do as I ease back into school this year is I'm going to protect my schedule a little bit more as I walk into the school doors. And what I mean by that is that I'm going to purposely schedule in times for school, things I have to get done, go back to my processes that I have in place, my 3 before 3 sticky notes that I like to do, but also to schedule something for myself every day because I've been doing that intentionally lately. And I do feel that I can get through more of my other to do lists. I'm more productive when I know I have something planned for myself. And that something planned sometimes, honestly, is just sitting in silence for 10 minutes after school Or maybe it's stopping on the way to school that morning, getting my favorite drink. Or maybe it's connecting with a teacher that day that I haven't seen in a while on the other side of the school. But I'm going to set one intention this year as I head into school, one schedule thing that I'm going to do every day for myself, but while in the school building. So if that's a
Mm.
walk at lunchtime, if that's maybe reading 10 pages of my book or something during a lunch break or whatnot, if it's actually sitting down to eat my lunch, because I also am bad at doing that, if it's leaving by a certain time, but just like scheduling one thing a day that I'm going to intentionally stick with, I think it's a nice way of easing back in because it's also putting in a way, a boundary on my own time, but how I spend my time within a school day. Because as we know as teachers, we don't get a choice in 99% of our school days at times. It's pretty scheduled for us. Things kind of happen as they do, and we have less and less time for ourselves in a school day. But I'm going to intentionally plan one very small thing for myself every day as I head back into school.
I was thinking that sometimes in the fall, what tends to go for me is the time outside or the time that I spend walking, and I love to be outside. But then I was thinking about how much supervision I will have and do enjoy as an administrator. So the beginning of the day, the recess supervisions, and the end of the day in our organization, administrators do a lot of supervision and for the best reasons, right? To be face to face with those kids, to be right there when things happen, to support the teachers. And I do love that. So I think my step count is actually, even though I get so many as a classroom teacher, as an administrator, my step count and my fresh air quota is going to go sky high, which is wonderful. I was thinking about how in my previous role, my admin partner and I would go for our own walk and talks outside on the tarmac, or I would go with our administrative assistant. We would head outside and go for a walk and chat about some things, and perhaps something we can implement that in my new partnership just to get some fresh air and a little bit of a times in the day.
I think my biggest takeaway from this four-part summer series has been that we get to choose how we navigate our own time. And so I think that doesn't have to change when we head back into school. Sure, there's of course constraints on the things that we have to do in a day, don't get me wrong, but there's also choice. There's choice in how we spend our days as teachers sometimes too. And I think that I know I have fallen victim, if you will, to the nitty gritty of the day in and day out of what it looks like to be in a school and in a classroom. So I think that by purposely choosing things though in the day that bring some little bit of spark or happiness, joy, however you want to say it, back into my world is going to help me be a better teacher as well. So that's one of my big takeaways from the summer series is I actually get to choose a bit of how I spend my time in my own classroom and running it the way that I kind of want to run it. So I'm going to take that to heart this year and really going to implement some different things moving forward that I've maybe never done before.
It makes me think of the teachers who have made their classroom space a lot like home. They have their snack drawer and they have their little fridge or they have their kettle or their coffee maker, whatever you're allowed to have in your district, and how those little perks like making a little coffee or having a cold drink or a special snack in the day can just give you that little perk that you need halfway through the day. I think you are at an exciting time, Nicole, and so am I, as we both transition into these new roles and how we can try to integrate some of these things that are necessary for our well being into our days. I think it's a really exciting opportunity.
So thanks everyone for joining us for these last four quick summer series of how we can reclaim our identity and step back into the classroom, hopefully a little bit more recharged than we have in previous years. And so on next week's episode, we actually had the chance to be guests on our first ever podcast with After the Bell, and their teaching duo, friend duo, if you will, out of Vancouver, British Columbia. And they have a teaching podcast, and we were super excited to be on that. So we are calling it, right, Michelle, a podcast within a podcast. Can you explain that a bit?
So we joined these two delightful teachers from Vancouver, British Columbia, as their guests. And honestly, Nicole, I remember how nervous we were going into that, but they made us feel such at ease right away and made us feel super comfortable. And so we are going to be airing their podcast on our podcast next week. And eventually they will hopefully come and be guests on our podcast down the road. We're super excited for you to tune into that and to hear how that conversation went.
That's right. So can't wait for you guys to tune in next week, and we'll catch you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Wait, is that the bell? The buses are rolling and we've got duty.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Teachers Next Door podcast. If you enjoyed this week's PD session, do us a solid. Leave a rating, 5 stars preferably, and a review. Think of it as giving us an A+ on our eval. It helps other listeners find their way to our neighborhood. As the kids say, please subscribe.
Do you have a burning question or topic you would like to hear about? Send us an email or message. Be sure to follow us on Instagram for show updates and details on future episodes.
This podcast was produced and edited by us, your teachers next door. No outsourcing here. The reality of all teachers. We do it all.
If nobody else has told you today, just remember, you are doing a great job. Catch you next time.
And we should mention, the ideas we share on this podcast are totally our own.